Hello and welcome to In a Spiritual Sense, where we discuss all things spiritual. From growing your intuition, speaking with spirit guides, diving into past lives, the paranormal, and more, join me, Stacey Piagno, where we work to bridge the gap between science and spirit. Hello and welcome back to In a Spiritual Sense. I'm your host, Stacey Piagno, and I'm going to start with a very exciting announcement. Dream circles are now open. I will be hosting small personal groups for all those who are interested in learning to interpret and work with your dreams and connect with your higher self. And they will be a combination of learning and sharing our experiences from the dream time. I'm trying to keep the groups small, about 5 people tops, so we'll have plenty of time to discuss and work with our interpretations. It's very similar to a workshop, and I'm going to have lots of different sessions available. And if this sounds interesting, but you're worried that you don't dream, or you're worried that you can't remember your dreams, please don't fret. I've tried this with many friends, and we've gotten to a point where they once could not connect with their dreams, and after a few quick shifts, they were able to do so. So, dream circles, yay, I'm excited. If you're interested, I've been posting lots of posts on Instagram, social media, so go check that out if you would like more info. I am currently working on a website, so that'll be up soon. I'll let you know as soon as it comes out. But for the meantime, if you are interested, shoot me an email at info@inaspiritualsense.com or send me a message on Instagram or whatever social media you use, and I'll send you all the details. With that, today's topic is quite the opposite of the dream world. Today we are bringing the conversation down to earth, quite literally, to discuss the energetics of grounding and the science behind what is actually happening with our energy and physical body when we ground. I think a lot of times when we become awakened to our spiritual gifts, we become so engaged with the energetics of the spirit world. It's as if we're always striving to connect with the cosmos or with our guides or with anything that's not of the physical. It's all about growing our intuition and tapping into the unseen. And because of this, it's easy to forget to ground. It becomes an afterthought because it's boring and it doesn't seem very new or exciting when compared to channeling spirits or experiencing miracles or unexplainable coincidences. However, in order to fully tap into the metaphysical in a safe, healthy way, we need to have an understanding of how and what grounding is. Because when we can learn to ground properly, it's actually grounding that in itself will make our metaphysical experiences more potent and easily accessible. And as a matter of fact, it's actually grounding that we should learn to master before opening ourselves to the vast energetic world of spirit. For those who are heavily empathic or intuitive and experience the energy of others very easily, you have to understand how to ground. Because when we are not grounded, it's as if some of our energetic layers are not with us. They are expanded out. And although, yes, we are in our physical body, it's as if our mind, heart, or spirit has either traveled or expanded further away. So for those daydreamers, mediums, this is a common issue. It's funny, I think just about every medium that I've either met or listened to has mentioned that they very heavily experience issues with focusing or ADD, which makes sense because they are so hypersensitive to everything around them. They are always tapping into everyone else's energy all the time. And some people have a good grasp of turning it on and off, but others struggle. So grounding is very important for those of you who are trying to grow your communication with spirit, because it will allow you to strengthen your focus on specific information versus being overwhelmed by your environment. So, grounding. Let me explain. Grounding is the process of removing excess charge on an object, such as us, in order to balance that object's energy. And we're going to get into how this works, but in layman's terms, when we get overwhelmed or stressed, or we're mentally and emotionally not feeling well, it usually has to do with the fact that we are ungrounded. Or if we're spending too much time in the higher realms, or maybe we're having trouble accessing those higher realms, trouble meditating, it's most commonly due to a grounding issue. So in this case, for those who struggle with focus or attention deficits, learning to ground and come back to the present is extremely important. In addition to this, for those who are heavily anxious or experience emotional suffering or depression, grounding is your cure. Now, why is this? Well, if we take a look at what's happening on the atomic level, meaning what's going on with our atoms, we are better able to understand. So I'm going to start you off with some science. Then we'll talk about how to incorporate it into our lives. So as a very quick background, atoms are what create our physical world. They are the basic building blocks of the physical. So today we're taking a step back from the quantum physics world, which is how we study the energy of wavelengths and frequency, the law of attraction. And we are stepping into more traditional physics, which is how we study that of the physical. So it's a bit of apples and oranges within the way we study that of energy and the way we study that of mass. Because when we speak in terms of energetics, we are easily able to follow the law that like attracts like. What we put out is what we get. We talk about that all the time. However, when we are discussing that of the physical, we will see that the laws revolve around opposites attracting. And this is where I believe science starts to get a little fuzzy. However, thanks to the late, great Albert Einstein, we have been better able to connect these laws of the physical and the energetic. From my understanding, that was really what he worked to do, was to explain the connection between the physical and the energetic, which at its core all works together. So today we're going to be focusing on a bit more of the physical level, and I think it's best to start with the atomic life of our bodies. Again, it all starts with atoms, the basic building block of the physical. Now, within the breakdown of atoms, we have protons, neutrons, and electrons. You might remember hearing about that back in grade school. For today's conversation, it's the electrons where we're going to be placing our focus. And I'm still learning a lot about this, but I'm going to do my best to try to explain it. Now, electrons are a subatomic particle of the atom, so a little part of the atom, and they hang on the atom's outer rings, and they carry a negative charge. And this is important because it's the electrons that can cause us to become either balanced or unbalanced, because it is the electrons that have the ability to be exchanged and moved. So from my understanding, it's the protons and neutrons that stay in the nucleus of the atom, and the electrons are roaming around the outside, and they can be exchanged from atom to atom, which as a result will change the energy of the objects or people created by those atoms. Now, if we take an atom and see that it has an overabundance of electrons, meaning there are more electrons than protons, then it creates a negatively charged atom. If, however, the atom is lacking electrons, meaning there are less electrons than protons, then it becomes a positively charged atom. When we have a positive or negative charged atom, we have something called an ion. Now, why does this matter? Because when discussing health at the atomic level, ions can make us or break us. And so it's important to know what they are and how they move within us. Because if we want to be healthy, we want negative ions. That's right, negative. It seems opposite by the name, but negative ions are good for us. Positive ions, not so much. This is when we see health issues attached. Fatigue, depression, anxiety, irritability, impaired brain function, a suppressed immune system. And this is due to the way the atoms react in our body and environment. They cause our system to become weighed down, thick, slow, grimy, imbalanced. Positive ions cause us to be very dense. Negative ions, on the other hand, allow us to feel light. They increase our serotonin levels. Serotonin is a chemical that carries messages between the nerve cells in our brain throughout our body. Serotonin plays a key role in our mood, sleep, digestion, our bone health, our energy, and just the overall ability to heal our body. So serotonin is a big deal. And it's the negative ions that help release this. So knowing that we want to dispel and get rid of positive ions and accumulate more negative ions will be the focus of grounding and our well-being. Now, how do we do this? Well, first I think it's important to understand where we pick up both positive and negative ions, because our body acts as a conduit for energy. That means energy is easily able to pass through the human body, and it does affect us. So positive ions, again, which we don't like, are often accumulated from things such as indoor air conditions, electrical devices, fluorescent lights, cities, industrial zones, often the things that are far removed from nature. However, within nature, we can also see positive ions created by things like strong winds, dust, pollution, pet dander, pollen, mold, etc. So these are the things and places we want to try to limit or reduce in order to prevent exposure to positive ions. Negative ions, on the other hand, can be found in oceans, mountains, forests, waterfalls. Already sounds more relaxing, doesn't it? Essentially, anywhere where moving water interacts with air is where we will find negative ions. Also, plants and things that grow naturally in nature have a large amount of negative ions as well, which is why you may hear about going for a walk in the woods or going to sit on a beach when you feel stressed or overwhelmed, depressed, or just in a bad mood. This is why. So let's get into the process of grounding. Now, there's a term in the physics world called a ground, and it doesn't have to be the actual ground with dirt. That is going to come into play. But for scientific purposes, a ground is simply a large object or surface that serves as an almost infinite source of electrons. Because remember, lots of electrons equals negative ions, which are good. So a ground is something that contains such vast space that it is the ideal object to either receive or supply electrons to whatever object needs to get rid of them or receive them. And so the best example of grounding is actually to use the ground of the earth because it is filled with negative ions and it is so much larger than a simple human body. So what happens is when we become filled with positive ions, the ones we don't like, from either city living or working with electronics or any of the above examples, one of the easiest ways to remove those excess ions is to go walk in the grass or the woods or the beach, because the ground is going to pull out those positive ions and replace them with negative ions. However, one thing to keep in mind if you really want to enhance your grounding is to take off your shoes. I think we've all probably heard that, but why? Well, what is the bottom of our shoes made of? Rubber. And what is rubber? It's an insulator. It blocks energy from passing through. So opposite from our bodies, which are conductors, allowing energy to pass, materials that are inductors will block or stop the flow of energy. Now, think about it. We are always wearing rubber on our feet. We are naturally blocking ourselves on a daily basis from receiving negative ions. And if you go out in nature with your shoes on, yes, you will still receive the benefits of those negative ions around you. Just know that you will more heavily enhance that flow if you take your shoes off. Along with wearing shoes, you heard me say earlier, positive ions radiate from electronics. I mean, we are in such a technological age. We have those negative ions floating around us and within us everywhere. We hold our phones up to our brains. We lay them on our laps. We always have headphones in our ears. Screens around us everywhere. And listen, that's our world. That's where we live. I'm not saying you have to drastically change your lifestyle if you don't want to. This life is for you to experience whatever you want. Enjoy it. My point is not to create worry or guilt if you live in a city or if you work with electronics or if you love electronics. I'm just saying, take off your shoes, walk in the grass, get outside and put down your phone. Just take time to disconnect. I remember I used to always talk about that just because it made me feel better. But now, here's an actual, tangible reason why. And speaking of grounding with the earth herself, here's a cool fact. If we take a step away from the physics world for a second and enter into the realm of frequency, so this is a quantum physics thing, the human body produces a frequency of 7.83 hertz. Hertz is the unit for how we measure frequency. So the human body produces 7.83 hertz, which, mind you, is the same frequency as the earth. It also vibrates at 7.83 hertz. So when we ground, we are not only rebalancing our ions, but we are also matching our frequency back to our core. Grounding is literally rebalancing our energy back to its most balanced natural state. And there are many studies out there that show the human brain reaches its ultimate potential for health and wellness when it resonates with that 7.83 hertz, the frequency of the earth. So knowing this, the most simple thing we can do is just go outside. However, what if you don't live in a place that gives you that access? Not to worry, there's lots of different ways to ground. You can actually ground with each of the 4 elements. Earth, which is what we just talked about, water, air, and fire. And you can also ground with each of the 4 bodies. We can ground mentally through the mind, emotionally through the heart, physically through the body, and spiritually through our intention and spiritual practices. So grounding doesn't have to just be for the physical body on the earth's actual ground. Grounding is just something that can push or pull our energy to rebalance our energy, and therefore rebalance our frequency and or our atoms. So I'm going to go through some quick ways to create negative ions and therefore help you ground. The first few are physical things that you can do. Most of these you probably already do. And then we'll go through some more unique ways to ground by moving through the 4 bodies and the 4 elements. So here's a few easy ones. 1, add a humidifier in your home. Why? Because it provides the water vapor needed for electrons to roam. So another fun fact, when we are in humid weather, we are receiving more negative ions. Again, which are the good ones, because negative ions, remember, hang where water meets air. So humid air is air with a greater amount of negative ions because it is air with a greater amount of water. And this also explains why air conditioners lack negative ions. So humidifiers and humid weather are great for us. And going out after a rainstorm. If you go outside after a rainstorm or as it starts misting, it's very grounding. And that's a good example of grounding through water and air, which we're going to get into more in a minute. Next, another thing you can do is put plants in your house. Why? Because it's a great way to ground and add those negative ions, especially with us using air conditioners. Look, I'm sorry, but I live in Florida and I'm going to keep my air conditioner on. But I have plenty of plants in my house and my workspaces, and they release a lot of negative ions, and they make your spaces and your body feel great. They really ground our energy. Again, it's nature, and we're bringing it inside, so it's going to have a positive effect. In addition to plants, here's something that we do almost daily. Take a shower or bath. Why? Because we don't want to stink. Just kidding. Because water is very grounding. I know it's not the land of the earth, but water is the earth. It's actually most of our earth, and it's most of ourselves as well. I think it's 71% of the earth is water and 60% of our bodies is water. So wouldn't we want to connect the water in our body with the natural water of the earth? It's the same concept of grounding our body with the earth's body. Baths and showers do this, especially if you add an intention, which will bring in the mental or spiritual aspect of grounding on top of that. But try to make this into a daily ritual for yourself. I've been doing this for years and it works great. When I get off work, I have lots of scattered energy attached to me. I'm usually pretty tired. I work with 19 6-year-olds, all yelling my name all day, every day, and they all have different personalities and different needs. So yeah, when I get home, I'm drained. So something that I do is burn my favorite incense or herbs, which we'll talk about in a minute. That's grounding through air. And I say a little prayer to release my energy. And I get in the shower and I visualize the water taking away any energy that is not for my best interest. And that's something I actually say. Spirit, please help me remove any energy that is not in my best interest or any energy that is not meant for me. Then I rinse it all away. And that's become a daily practice of mine. That's grounding through the spiritual because I'm incorporating the ritual and prayer, grounding through the air, the smoke of the herbs, grounding through the mental by visualizing all that excess energy falling off, and grounding through the water. So that's a good example of something that is very simple. It uses the 4 elements or the 4 bodies, and showering is already something that we do daily. So it's not really that demanding. Also, in terms of grounding through water, if you want to enhance this, go to the beach. I mean, if you have access, because salt is extremely high in negative ions. You've all heard of sea salt. Well, it comes from the sea. It's very purifying and can quickly cleanse our energy. So you can do this in salt water or just go for a swim in general. Rivers, lakes, I know these aren't salt, but whatever you have access to that's natural is great for our system. In addition to water, another super simple thing you can do is stretch. I mean, on the physical level, stretching initiates blood flow. And having healthy blood flow is not only good for our joints, but it also helps prevent injuries. It increases serotonin levels, which again decreases stress, anxiety, depression. Along with stretching, any physical activity is a great way to ground for the same reason as stretching. But if you hate physical activity, at least just stretch. Once a day, twice a day. In many Japanese cultures, stretching is a part of their daily routine, like on a societal level. They teach stretching from a young age to the kids in school, and it's culturally done every morning as they wake up and every night before they go to bed. And it not only gets your blood flowing and improves both brain and body function, but it also gets our chi moving, the energetic life force within us. It awakens our chakras and connects us to spirit. Just 5 minutes in the morning or night can make such a difference. In addition to stretching, I'm going to mention meditation, and this can fall both under the spiritual and mental side of grounding, even emotional. It depends on your intention when meditating. But depending on what your body needs, meditating can be anything from just sitting in silence and resting your mind to intentionally visualizing what it is you need. You can do it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, anything. Just start. They say 15 minutes for meditation is the sweet spot to getting us into that transcendental state, which is that relaxed state. And there are infinite ways to practice meditating, just as there are infinite ways to ground. But something that I want to touch on to help with meditation is try to diagnose your energetic issues either before you meditate or use the meditation to do that. And what I mean by this is try to feel into or ask yourself why it is your energy needs grounding. The answer is most commonly going to revolve around the fact that you're either placing your energy in the future, which will come across as anxiety or just anxiousness, or you're placing your energy in the past, which can turn into depression if we don't work with it. In both of these cases, the issue is that our energy is not in the present. So what does meditation and grounding do in general? It helps bring our energy to the present. This is really the cause of any dis-ease or disease itself. Disease is broken down into dis-ease, to be uneasy. And when we can pinpoint what is happening with our energy, this will give us an intention to work with when meditating so we can attack it straight on. So for example, when I get home from work, my energy is really scattered. It's all over the place because I've been doing too many things all at once, all day with so many kids, and it's hard for me to focus and relax when I get home. This is probably the case for like 90% of us, right? We have such busy lifestyles. In this case, when I'm meditating, I can feel my energy expanded super far out. I'm thinking of the next thing I can do to be productive, and my mind is just racing and I can't turn it off. So as a result, I make sure to take some time for myself. Again, for me, it's in the shower to release that energy and pull myself back together. So something cool to try is to visualize all the energy from your day that is not yours float away, and the energy that is yours pull back to your core. I heard a really great exercise for rebalancing your energy through meditation, and it's a daily exercise, and it can be as quick or as long as you want. But it goes something along the lines of, imagine yourself standing in the middle of a football field. You can also imagine yourself in a different location, so somewhere in nature if you prefer. But imagine all the faces of those who you have encountered from your day, and visualize them standing on the sideline of the football field in a straight line, and practice breathing in and out. As you breathe in, you're going to visualize yourself pulling back all of your energy from those interactions. And as you breathe out, you're going to release and give back all the energy that belongs to others. Because as we go through our day-to-day, we are constantly exchanging energy from everyone we encounter. So we are actually giving out our energy and receiving the energy of others constantly. Knowing this, imagine what must happen to us when we don't clear that out or take the time to recenter ourselves. Energy is real and it does affect us. I mean, it is us. And as I mentioned, it's constantly being exchanged. And if we aren't aware of this, we're going to be at the mercy of the energy of those that we have exchanged it with, which usually isn't for us to carry. So this is a great meditation you can do, and it doesn't have to take long. I think that's a misconception with meditating. It's not that you have to sit for long periods of time. I think that theory comes into play because it takes such a long time for us to decompress. Also, in different cultures, that is a specific way to practice meditation. But for me at least, the point of meditating is just to feel better. And it can be quick if you can learn to really embody your visualizations or stillness or whatever your goal is. Because if we can truly learn to drop into that space of whatever it is we're visualizing, then it doesn't have to take forever. The goal is to feel your intention. And as you get better, you might enjoy having longer meditations. It's all up to you. Again, they say 15 minutes is the sweet spot, but it could be more or less. There's no rules. It's all based on how you feel. So try that visualization if you're feeling anxious, or honestly, you should just practice it daily. And this can even work with depression too. Depression is when we get stuck in the past. We wish things had gone differently, or we wish things were back to the way they once were. When we think this way, we become mentally stuck. And similar to anxiety, which is getting stuck in the future, what we are lacking with both of these issues is the awareness of the present. A lack of the present is what causes us to lose our power and become unaligned. We become lost, frazzled, again, anxious or depressed. So we fix it by 1, acknowledge what kind of energy we're holding, and 2, work to counteract that energy. Bringing ourselves back to present always alleviates these issues. So, how do we bring ourselves back to present? We ground. All of these tips that we're going over today will help bring ourselves back to the present. Because remember, on the atomic level, we're replacing our dense energy, that charged with positive ions, to that charged with negative ions, lighter energy. So, a few more quick things to try. We talked about burning herbs or incense. Just make sure they're pure, because whatever it's made of is going to be in your air. I usually just burn herbs, but whatever you want. This is an example of grounding through the air. And you can also play with your intention, because whatever herbs or incense you use is going to have a different effect on that space. So quick examples. Sage has all clearing properties. If you burn it, it will clear both good and bad. It's a neutralizer. Palo Santo keeps the high frequencies, gets rid of the low, dense energies. Cedar, sweetgrass. You can look up different herbs and what they help with. But this is a great way to add intentions when grounding. If you like crystals, we spoke about this in the past and I have an episode out on it, but similar to herbs, bringing crystals with different properties into your auric space will change the properties of your frequency to match that of the crystal. So this is a quantum physics thing. It's an exchange of frequency. The crystal is what we're using as our, quote, ground, because it has a fixed energy that interacts with our free-flowing energy. So it changes us. Or adding crystals into a space will change the frequency of that space. Breath work is great for grounding. It helps you, again, come back to the present. And I'm not as knowledgeable on different types of breathing exercises, but if it piques your interest, I would definitely look into it. I do know just intentional breathing in general is very beneficial to our brain and health. If you're feeling upset or ungrounded, just try to take 4 slow breaths. And if your mind is still racing or you can't focus, try counting your breath. It really brings you to the moment, which again is probably why we're ungrounded. So these are just a few things we can do to start us on our grounding journey and help us understand why it is so important to our health. Because when we understand what is actually going on with our energy and our physical body, we have more control over our lives. We have more control of how we feel and what we experience, which results in greater health and well-being. There's a quote I wrote a while back that I still refer to when I'm feeling stressed, and it really connects me with the earth. I remember I was sitting outside when I wrote it, really feeling into Mother Earth, and I don't think I've shared it on the podcast, but if I did, I'm going to share it again because it really reminded me of today's conversation. So I'll leave you with this last little gift, and as always, if you enjoyed today's episode, please use it to inspire those around you, and I'll see you next time on In a Spiritual Sense. This earth is a spirit. She is a living, breathing body. We are here to take care of her, and in return, she will take care of us. Feel her heartbeat. Listen to her wind. As you breathe in, she breathes out. You are one. And in this oneness, you are unstoppable. Your life is anything you want it to be. You just have to create it. It is quite simple, really. And in this simplicity, all your creations will be made. For those looking to connect further, please feel free to send emails to info@inaspiritualsense.com or hit me up on Instagram, where you can find weekly inspiration and updates. I look forward to connecting with you.